I'm going to discuss the ideas of the individualist liberalists, this new political or philosophical movement started by Sargon of Akkad and his cadre. Let's start with this one. This is from Cow, from 8chan, and some guy who I assume is a liberalist, although not probably not Sargon of Akkad, was criticizing collectivism as follows. The problem is that the inherent premise of collectivism is inaccurate. Here's why. Collectivism treats groups as real, separate entities from the individuals that comprise them. This is why the notion of group rights is a thing. However, we have to understand that individuals exist in a real, tangible way that collectives do not. This is easily proven with a very simple thought experiment. Imagine what an individual without any group looks like. Probably quite lonely, cold, under threat at all times. Now imagine what a group without any individuals within it looks like. You can't, because groups do not exist in any tangible way outside the individuals that comprise them. This is because collectives are abstractions. They are a representation of all the individuals that comprise it. This also necessarily means that individuals are both simultaneously the smaller, most indivisible unit of society, while also the largest independently conscious unit of society. Another argument for the abstract nature of groups is the fact that one person will be organized into multiple groups simultaneously and may identify with some groups more than others. So which is necessarily more moral? Individualism, which puts the rights of tangible individuals over the rights of the group and protecting the group by extension, or collectivism, which claims the rights of an abstraction supersede the rights of tangible, independently conscious individuals. Collectivism was created as a means to violate people's rights on a logical basis. That's the sole reason it exists. So basically this guy is saying that forests don't exist, since forests comprise of large groups of trees, and you only have individual trees, you don't have a forest. And sure, technically he's right. A group doesn't exist without the individuals, but that doesn't mean that the group doesn't exist or it cannot act as a group or anything like that. Like a military, a corporation, they are groups, and certainly they exist to promote their own interests. And I suppose their argument is that those things are bad and they shouldn't be. And I suppose I can say I agree to a certain extent, yet I just don't see any practical solution to solve these problems from the liberalists. If you really want to go split everything apart, to say that, groups aren't real because they just comprise of individuals and stuff, so families don't exist because families are groups, and families tend to put the well-being of the family before the well-being of the individual, because, basically a family, if it works properly, it's not supposed to oppress the individual. It sets some limits, boundaries, rules for those individuals, and they're expected to follow them to a certain extent. you have to take out the trash on Mondays, but your brother takes it out on Thursdays or whatever. And I know that Sargon of Akkad and V and some other these liberalist skeptics, they play Dungeons and Dragons, tabletop role-playing game, and I've been playing them for years and years. So that is also a group, and you do basically put the group itself, the act of role-playing, the cooperative storytelling is the main point, and any individual isn't supposed to dominate the whole group, or then the experience will be crappy for all the other players if one is a true individualist and does whatever he wants and doesn't take others into account. when you organize a gaming session in a role-playing game, well, it's usually assumed that, whenever you play, like once a week, once a month, whatever, that, the people try to set time aside to be able to play with the others. Like, of course, if they have they have to go work, or they, their grandma died and have to go to a funeral, most groups, reasonable, good friends and players, they understand, like, okay, now he cannot come, so either we play without that guy, or we, postpone it to next week or whatever. Yeah, it's not supposed to oppress the individual. Like, it's supposed, like, the group benefits the individual. And I suppose this guy might say that, well, that's not collectivism then, it's just a group. But, like, here is the dictionary definition of collectivism, like a political or academic theory advocating collective control, especially over production and distribution. So that's obviously not applicable to role-playing games. It's more like applicable to communism or something. And the second explanation is emphasis on collective rather than individual action or identity. Like in a role-playing game, the action of the collective of the role-playing group is done through the individuals. Like, everybody contributes to it. Like, everybody should have their, like, your own character they play, except the game master. They bring something to the story, but overall it's supposed to be the main story. Like, each individual might have their subplots or whatever, like in a TV show, but overall the main purpose of this storytelling is the story itself, which is that the group upholds. I think this whole dichotomy between, like, collectivism and individualism is retarded. And, like, some guy pointed out, probably on this forum or something, like how maybe somebody can be individualist in some respects and collectivist in some other respects. National defense, like, yeah, basically, yeah, I agree that individuals who have rights to do whatever they want, within reason, of course. As long as they don't infringe upon the rights of others and so forth. But, if there's war or something, or some, catastrophe, like a, earthquake, then yeah, you sort of have to act collectively. And it is like a limited form of collectivism that I think is good. Like, if you work together with your peers to try to survive the whatever disaster you are facing. Like, this liberalist individualist, they just sound like awkward people that have trouble interacting with people, and they don't like others to judge them or tell them what they do, and sometimes you have to tell others what to do. Like, sometimes people are just selfish or stupid, and somebody has to, like, impose some rules or criteria or some norms on them. The obvious example is, of course, that the parents should enforce some rules on the children, because if you just let children decide individually what they do, then they just eat candy and play computer games all day. But of course, the parents is like, okay, no more candy. Now you have to eat some proper food, and you have to go to school or do this or that. You can't just play all day long. And certainly you can say, like, but those are children. It's of course different. But yeah, I think it's still applicable to many adults. Like, not all adults are equal, and you do have to tell some adults what to do. And of course, it's not like an easy task to determine, like, when to do it and when not to do it. And I certainly don't like to compare the state to the parents or something, but some people in society should tell others what to do. Like, and once again, you have to look at it on, like, individual cases, individual societies, and between individuals, like, when you should tell them what to do and when you shouldn't. Like, for example, Muslims that come to Europe and rape and pillage, you should, well, not just tell them, stop it, but, do something to stop them. And it is basically the collective actually happened in Europe. The collective would impose its norms upon these individuals. Since, not all Muslims do this, so you cannot blame the collective of the Muslims. If you're part of a football team or something, you basically, when you play the game, you're supposed to play to win. You're not supposed to... Individual feelings don't matter as much as trying to do your best and be a benefit to the team. And of course, like, if it makes you feel horrible and your needs are not being met, then the collective is mistreating you. But the basic idea is that the needs of the collective go, like, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. In some cases that is applicable, but not in all cases. And another implication of this is that basically that collectives shouldn't be able to infringe, like, tell individuals what to do, but that's what basically every, like, corporation or whatever where you work, unless you're like have a private company and you're the boss and the only employee or something. The corporation is supposed to make profit, and your individual needs aren't as important as the needs of the corporation. Now, I would say that maybe they want to, abolish corporations. Like, I'm certainly against corporatism. Like, I wouldn't mind if the liberalists manage to get rid of, like, a Coca-Cola company or McDonald's or Starbucks. Like, I think the world would be a better place without it, but good luck doing it. Like, you won't be able to abolish the Coca-Cola company without some solid plan. You cannot just appeal to their morality, or even you cannot just tell the government, like, look, that's oppressing the rights of the individual. Like, and of course, if they were to abolish all corporations, maybe in the end it would create more problems than it solves. But certainly, like, if that's what they are gunning for, these liberalists, then I'm intrigued, but I just doubt they have any, like, practical solutions how they would fight against the corporatist machine. And this is the Bill of Rights of the Liberalist Principles, written by Sargon, apparently. And it's interesting because JF did a debunking video of this principles a few days ago, and you can see here, like, back then the list was much longer. Like, this individual rights, it has 2 paragraphs. Now it's only 1. Like, everything is cut down to size. I think it's probably due to JF's criticism. Well, of course, it's good to listen to criticism and learn from it, but I just get the impression that, they don't really know what they're doing, and they're like, fuck, okay, we cannot write this. So now it's, like, so fucking short that this doesn't even mean much. This is the list of values that liberalists hold as ideals. Promoting this worldview will produce a demonstrably better society than the current alternatives. And then it's this fucking short list with, protecting individual rights must be highest value of society to foster mutual tolerance and respect towards the cultivation of the dignity of every person. Well, no, I don't think that all individual rights are equal. For example, I think it's more important to, have freedom of speech, like, you can criticize any nation's foreign policy, or you can question historical matters, you can disagree with them, and, like, alleged genocides and so forth. I think that those things are much more important individual rights compared to the right to promote ethical child porn, or your right to watch tranny hentai or something. This doesn't mean anything, because, like, a society has to be based on some actual values, like importance of family, or communist rule of the proletariat, or Islamic caliphate, Islamic values, or something. Like, that's just how society works. Like, it has to be based on values with a substance, but this is just like whatever. Like, as long as it's your individual choice, it's a good thing. It doesn't mean shit. And yeah, also I would say that sometimes the rights of a collective are more important than the rights of some individuals. For example, I think the right for poor people to housing is more important than the right of an individual to watch tranny porn or tranny hentai. Democracy is the best way for a free citizenry to maintain a state and resist tyranny. Well, I think this is interesting, at least, well, Plato, he said that democracy will degenerate into tyranny. Like, he has these 5 different phases of a nation or something. Aristocracy, democracy, which is like rule by people who own property or something. Oligarchy, democracy, and then democracy then degenerates into tyranny, where no one has discipline and society exists in chaos. Sounds like the phase we are now living in. Democracy is taken over by the longing for freedom. It's almost like Plato saw, he predicted Sargon of Akkad. Power must be seized to maintain order. There will be a tyrant, people will hate him, but they will try to remove him and fail. So it's just that I don't think there's one single person that is the tyrant. It's more like the globalist, transnational liberalist system that is the tyrant. And the tyrannical man is the son of the democratic man. He is the worst form of man due to his being the most unjust and thus furthest removed from any joy of the true kind. He is consumed by lawless desires which cause him to do many terrible things such as murdering and plundering. War on terror, spreading democracy. He comes closest to complete lawlessness. The idea of moderation does not exist to him. He is consumed by the basest pleasures in life, and being granted these pleasures at a whim destroys the type of pleasure only attainable through knowing pain. If he spends all his money, he becomes poor. The tyrant will steal and conquer to satiate his desires, but will eventually overreach and force unto himself a fear of those around him, effectively limiting his own freedom. It seems like Plato understood something. It sounds very accurate to the current state of things where, degeneracy and transgenderism and individual right to your fucking hentai is the most important thing. And okay, let's go back to this thing. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, private property is good. This is so controversial. Freedom of speech is necessary and fundamental pillar of a free society. Wow, like this phrase has so much depth to it. People possess agency and should be treated as such, because treating people like victims becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. I guess this is just some Sargon taking pot shots at SJWs and the alt-right and this secularism. Everybody is free to practice their religion or not, as long as it does not interfere with the rights of others. Like JF noted, before they, somewhere on top of this list, they said that, groups cannot have rights. I think they removed it now. But now it says, all people must be allowed to worship privately or publicly or not at all, as long as their religious beliefs do not interfere with the rights of others. This includes the ability to establish religious institutions and proselytize their faith. So JF pointed out this is a group right. So they just, get rid of these details that are inconvenient in the new batch of Liberalist Principles. So does this new list then imply that you cannot form establish religious institutions and proselytize your faith or not? Like, I don't know, like this is so fucking short. It doesn't say anything really controversial or new or like, of course the movement is still fairly new, so of course you cannot expect all of them to have all of their points well thought out and stuff, but it doesn't seem like they have anything thought out. It's just, what feels good. that's what we're gonna say. And like, I predict that the liberalist society will end with either a whimper or a bang. Like either they, these autists, they will just they will have a liberalism, like they will argue on the internet for a few weeks or months, and then it's just like, like, oh, they know this is going nowhere, and they will just forget about the whole thing, and Sargon will go back to making videos about low-hanging fruit or whatever, and they will hope that everybody forgets about this whole thing, or they will somewhere at first, and they will like form some weird cult. As I made a video about it like last March already, noting that the skeptic community had cult-like features to it, and I was right. So yeah, either like maybe they will manage to form some sort of the ideological cult, but eventually it will lead to some sort of infighting tragedy, and it might be really entertaining to watch it. And yeah, here is like at least I prefer these sort of statements for more than these very abstract, meatless arguments that you can choose to interpret however you want. Like, this is at least a concrete issue that Sargon, Carl Benjamin, is addressing here, but he's not really offering any solution. So on the bake the cake issue, which is the controversy that, should a Christian baker be forced to bake a cake for a gay wedding because the Christian doesn't want to do it because it's homosexuality is against his values. So Carl writes, in my opinion, this is two different issues conflated into one. I find it unjustifiable to force a person into a contract they do not wish to fulfill, such as being forced to accept a commission to create a cake against one's will. This is a separate issue to the right to refuse service as a general customer to a business, which, in my opinion, should be done on an individual basis due to egregious behavior. So, like, flagrant behavior, like, causing a scene or something. I find myself in agreement with Mill. Transactions are social activities and should be governed by the laws and norms of society at large. Ultimately, this means that nobody should be forced to bake a gay cake, but a business should not be allowed to put up a no blacks or no Irish sign in the window either. Looking forward to people's thoughts on this. Well, my thoughts are that Sargon just wants to be nice to everybody. Like, he wants to respect people's freedoms, but also you shouldn't be mean to anybody. So basically, he is for the right to refuse the baker to bake a gay cake, but you cannot just say it honestly. Like, this is like his pill pull stuff once again. Like, you can do whatever you want, but just be polite. Don't be too blatant about that. You don't like this certain kinds of group or ideology. Like, and how does he define what is egregious behavior? Like, if the storekeeper can decide himself what is egregious behavior, maybe let's say a homosexual goes to the Christian bakery and then he acts like a normal person. Okay, then he has to sell the cake, but if there's like a pansy ass faggot, like, can you bake me a cake for my wedding? He has like a pink purse or something, then it's like, no, that's too egregious. Does the individual, like the storekeeper, does he decide what is egregious, or does the state decide what is egregious behavior? Like, yeah, my opinion is like, of course, Christians should be allowed to refuse baking cake to sodomites, but that goes to my values. I'm not a Christian, but I certainly value Christianity more than sodomy. It just goes to my values. It's not ultimately even it's not about your freedom, it's about your values, because everybody is a slave to their values in some sense. It's impossible for a person, for a human being, not to have some sort of values. Like they can try to justify it however they do, but ultimately everybody has some values, some moral preferences and whatnot, and you should act on them. Of course you should think about them rationally and try to justify them and stuff, but ultimately you should act on your own values. Freedom just to be free is not really a value. You have to have freedom to do something, freedom to be a Christian, freedom to be a homosexual, freedom to be an atheist or a Holocaust denier or whatever. And okay, one last thing is this Liberalist survey from the Reddit page of the Liberalistism page. And it has gotten like 16 upvotes. So I think this is something that many of the liberalists actually like. Of course, this is just one survey and stuff. But yeah, let's just look at some of the points of the survey. Yeah, this is very strongly disagree, very strongly agree, and something in between. Like, I've always hated these things. I don't think that you can actually get any good information out of them. Especially not if you're trying to start some sort of very intellectual political movement or philosophical ideology. Yeah, I don't think that they're going to determine their whole ideology just based on this questionnaire stuff. But ultimately, I think if they're really serious about this stuff, Sargon and his close allies or whoever, they should write their own constitution to their ideology or something, and after they made the first draft or something, which is I suppose this one, then their followers should offer criticism and stuff, because you cannot have potentially hundreds of thousands of people on Reddit or whatever arguing that, oh, I think we should do this, I think we should do that. They won't get anywhere. So yeah, first they address the liberalist principles, and also if you want to address these principles, you should actually you should write a comment detailing. It's just no, I don't agree with individual rights. Then okay, why don't you agree with individual rights? Internet coverage is or should be a guaranteed right. Drug tests should be mandatory. I don't know. My country's government should be allowed to tax its citizens. But how can you have a country without taxes, like a government? Hey, maybe you can, but I'd like you to explain it to me. And yeah, this looks like it's been written by an American, so this, I guess they're proposing a new American constitution. And yeah, to go back to the bit about where I said that, Sargon and his cohort should write the liberalist constitution or principles or whatever, instead of a random group of people on Reddit, because, well, isn't that how the Americans wrote their constitution? It was this a group of the political elites who wrote it. They didn't really ask democratically the people what they think about it. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not an expert when it comes to the history of the American independence stuff, but yeah, it just seems more realistic that it could work like that, but not just random people spouting their opinions on Reddit, especially since there's a lot of trolls there. It sounds like this is an American thing, because are they gonna are they expecting to start the Western liberalist empire or something and meld all of Europe and Americas, US and Canada together? Or is it just they expect every Western nation to establish their new constitution based on these principles, or what? Because, well, this point goes, tax money usage should be increased for government agencies such as CDC, FEMA, and other essential agencies. Tax money usage should be increased for non-essential government agencies such as NASA. Yeah, I totally agree. NASA is non-essential. It's a fucking joke. No, I don't think they fucking went to the moon. I suppose I have to make a separate video about that at some point. I did address it in one of my gaming videos long ago when I used to make gaming videos, but nobody watched them. Tax money usage should be increased for military and surveillance purposes. Yeah, I think the liberalists like that. This is how I think it is in many countries. Prostitution should be legal, but hiring prostitutes should stay illegal. I think it's dumb. I think prostitution just should be illegal and hiring prostitutes should be illegal. It makes no fucking sense. Prostitution and solicitation of prostitutes should be legal. Well, if you are going with this, full, freedom of individual, it should be legal. But hey, I'm fascist authoritarian, so I think that prostitution should always be illegal. If prostitution were legal, it should be regulated by the state. Yeah, state-funded prostitutes. Sounds like a real liberal utopia. An individual should be legally able to alter their bodies going so far or further as to appear to be the opposite sex. Oh, this is transphobia, like microaggression against trans people, because it's implying that trans people only appear to be the opposite sex, that they don't actually become the opposite sex. How unprogressive of them. It should be legal for individuals to discriminate on an individual basis. Like, no, it should be illegal to discriminate on an individual basis. Like, I shouldn't have the right to discriminate based on who I let come into my apartment. Like, normally I only let friends and family come to my place, but I should just let anybody come to my apartment. I should just allow any random stranger or refugee or a bum to come to my place and crash. A person should be able to join movements, gangs without facing legal retribution for joining. I wonder if a lot of them will actually say that no, you shouldn't be able to join a movement. So then they gonna join the liberalist movement. That would be funny. My country's surveillance network has every right to track citizens for joining terrorist movements such as the KKK or Antifa. Is KKK really a terrorist movement? Like, have they done any acts of terror in, decades? Like, sure, you can say they're, the hate group is a dumb word, but like, you can say that they're a group that promote violence against minorities or something, or I don't know, but is it really a terrorist movement? Like, I think Antifa basically is. All religion should be banned to preserve a moral and secular society. Just, I don't know what they're going. I guess they just want to know, like, what sort of principles their followers have, but will this help? Because any fucking troll can just fill this form the way they want and then send it, and well, they can't really get any honest view of the actual liberalists of how they feel about these issues. War on terror is a necessary war following 9/11 and 7/7 attacks. Well, yeah, that's another thing that that I've criticized the skeptics about in the past, is that they only whine about, they used to only whine about the SJWs and feminists. Nowadays they also whine about the alt-right, but they seem to have like a really short, they have a short attention span on contemporary history. Like, they're not, I suppose some of them might have like criticized the war on terror and what all the shit that Bush did, but in general I don't think that they really recognize that there's just part of the same liberal globalist agenda, like Bush and Obama, and even though like yeah, during Bush era, it wasn't so much about this, identity politics and gay rights and feminism and stuff. But they're still ultimately they benefit the same globalist agenda, the same agenda that has certainly been, ruling the West ever since World War II. But they don't really connect that, they just fight against this one symptom of, this transnational globalist liberalism. I think this is funny. The next logical step for the war on terror is to invade Iran. I guess I would say yes, but I'm against the war on terror. I've been against it since day one. So I don't want them to invade Iran, but I think it is a reasonable argument that it is the next logical step, yes, if you want to continue the war on terror. I have a confession to make. I did fill this form out earlier, and I said, global warming is real and impacting the world today. I said, no, I disagree. And then global warming is a bigger issue than any terror group. I said, yes, I agree. So I disagreed with the fact that global warming exists, but I agreed that it's a bigger threat than a terror group. I don't know. I think it was funny. Israel has every right to exist and my country should work to further help it. Well, this sounds, once again, it's a very American comment. I'm not saying that the person who wrote this survey actually necessarily agrees with this statement. They should, decide, are they gonna try to implement this in every country or do they, because different countries, even in the West, have different cultures and values and history and laws and stuff. And, different countries need different kinds of solutions for different kinds of problems. You cannot just have this universal, if you have this universal set of principles that it applies to everything, is something so generic that nobody really would disagree with. Or then it has to be more specific if you want to, make it work in your country. So yeah, I think the whole liberalist thing is a joke. So it is, I think it's funny to follow all the fuck ups that they have done and that they will continue doing. But I guess if some liberalist happens to watch this video all the way to the end, I suppose I still have a little bit of respect for Sargon. No, this is gonna end up in a disaster. You're just gonna end up humiliating yourself at best. Maybe you will, I don't know, maybe something even worse will happen. And yeah, I'm not alt-right. I don't like the alt-right. I think alt-right is, well, especially Richard Spencer is a Zionist, Mike Enoch, possibly a Jew, and he has a Jew wife who is a fag hag. I don't like the alt-right because I think it's controlled opposition, and so I'm just saying it, is there any way Sargon and his friends can salvage the situation without, looking completely stupid or losing, all respect? I think they're just gonna go full kraut